He was just an 8-year-old boy, barefoot, trembling, and silent. But when he raised his small hand and gave a secret signal to the police dog, within seconds the entire crowd gasped, because what that dog uncovered changed everything they thought. They knew about the rain poured over the narrow streets of Atlanta that night. Police sirens wailed in the distance, flashing blue and red against old brick walls. Detective Mark Holland stood under his umbrella, watching as the rescue team searched through the burned remains of a small house. Inside that house had lived Riley Carter, a quiet 8-year-old black boy, the only survivor of the tragic fire that had taken his mother's life just 3 nights ago. But Riley hadn't spoken a word since. Neighbors said he hadn't cried, hadn't eaten much, and hadn't said anything even when the firemen carried him out, covered in soot and ashes. He just stared at the ground, at his burned toy truck, and sometimes at the police K-9 unit. Detective Mark had seen many traumatized kids, but there was something different about this boy. The way Riley's eyes followed the German Shepherd, Rex, was unsettling, as if he knew something no one else did. "Kid's been through hell," one officer muttered. Mark nodded, but deep inside, he knew trauma alone couldn't explain that look in Riley's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was knowing, and that made him uneasy. When Mark crouched down beside him, speaking softly, "Hey, buddy, do you remember what happened?" Riley didn't respond. His small hand tightened around a burned photo. His mother smiling beside a man whose face was half torn away by the fire. "Who's this?" Mark asked gently. No answer, just silence. But when Rex the police dog walked closer, Riley did something strange. He slowly raised his hand, made a small circular motion with his fingers, and then pointed toward the remains of the back wall of the house. Mark frowned. "What's he doing?" "Probably nothing," an officer said. "Just a scared kid?" But Rex's ears perked up. The dog growled softly and then lunged toward the burned wall, scratching furiously. Moments later, the team froze as something metallic clanged beneath the rubble. Mark rushed over. "What the hell is that?" They cleared the debris, revealing a hidden metal box, scorched but intact. Inside, they found a small flash drive, some photographs, and a bloody child's shoe. Mark's throat tightened. He turned to Riley, but the boy was just sitting there, staring back with calm, hollow eyes, like he already knew what they'd find. And that's when Mark realized the boy hadn't lost his voice. He was choosing not to speak, because he was hiding something far bigger than anyone could imagine. Detective Mark stood still as the rain soaked through his coat. The flash drive glistened faintly in the dim light, blackened on one edge, but still intact. One of the forensic officers, Janet, carefully placed it in a sealed bag. Mark's gaze shifted to Riley, who now sat on the ambulance bumper, wrapped in a silver blanket. His lips were pale, and his eyes, far too calm for an 8-year-old, stayed fixed on the police dog, Rex. The boy hadn't flinched when the box was found. He hadn't blinked when the shoe inside turned out to be his own, the missing one from the night of the fire. He just stared, silent, as if waiting for something. Mark approached him. "Riley," he said softly, crouching to his eye level. Did you want us to find that box?" Riley didn't speak, but his tiny hand made that same circular motion again, a deliberate signal. Then he pointed to the flash drive. Janet frowned. "That can't be a coincidence." "He knew it was there." Mark nodded slowly. "And he wants us to look inside." Back at the station, they dried off and plugged the flash drive into the evidence computer. A folder popped up, labeled only M. Inside were several short video clips, timestamps from months before the fire. Mark clicked the first one. The screen flickered, showing a familiar kitchen, the same one from the burned house. Riley's mother stood near the counter, looking anxious. A man in a police uniform, not one of theirs, stood across from her, speaking harshly. "You keep quiet about the shipments," the man's voice barked. "You got your cut." "Don't go soft now." Mark's blood ran cold. "That uniform," he whispered. "That's not standard issue." The next clip showed her crying, saying, "There's a boy here. I won't let him grow up around this." Then she grabbed her phone, and the man slammed it from her hand. The video cut off with static. The room fell silent except for the hum of the computer fan. Janet looked at Mark. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Mark exhaled, staring at the paused image of the officer's blurred badge. Yeah, somebody inside the department might have been running something illegal. And Riley's mother found out. When Mark turned back toward Riley, the boy was sitting in the corner of the observation room. His small hands were folded tightly, trembling now. Rex, the canine, padded over to him and lay down at his feet. Riley reached out, his fingers brushing the dog's fur, whispering something too soft to hear. Mark stepped closer to the glass and caught a glimpse of Riley's, lips forming a single word, safe. For the first time, Mark felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. This boy wasn't just traumatized. He was a witness, and maybe the only one who knew who killed his mother. And whoever that uniformed man was, he'd realize soon that Riley was still alive. And then the real danger would begin. The storm had passed, but the city felt heavier than ever. Detective Mark couldn't shake the image of that man's blurred badge from his head. There was something about his stance, the way he leaned in, the cold confidence, that screamed cop. And if he was a cop, that meant someone inside the department had been running an operation, dirty enough to kill for. Riley was moved to a temporary foster home under police protection. But Mark couldn't rest. He spent the next morning trying to trace any officers matching the build and uniform from the video. Nothing came up. No records, no assigned shifts, no body cam references. Whoever that man was, he'd cleaned his tracks, but someone else hadn't. The flash drive contained metadata, timestamps, camera sources, and even a phone number logged under backup recovery. Mark followed that lead. It pointed to an unregistered burner SIM, but the first 3 digits matched internal police inventory stock. That meant someone had stolen communication devices from inside the precinct itself. Janet entered Mark's office holding a printed report. The Foster family just called. They said Riley hasn't spoken, but he's been making signals. Mark frowned. What kind of signals? He keeps tracing circles with his finger, over and over. Then he points out the window. Mark froze. That was the same motion he'd made before, the one that led Rex to the buried box. He grabbed his coat. We're going. When they arrived, the house was quiet. The foster mother, an elderly woman named Mrs. Turner, met them at the door, nervous. He hasn't said a word, Detective, but he keeps looking toward the woods behind the house. Mark walked through the small living room and found Riley sitting by the window, his small hand pressed to the glass, eyes wide. Hey, champ, Mark said softly. You okay? Riley didn't look away. His lips trembled as he whispered something barely audible. He's here. Mark's chest tightened. Who's here? The boy turned slowly, eyes wet. The man. Janet glanced outside and froze. A dark sedan sat parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. Mark's instincts screamed. He drew his gun and signaled Janet toward the side window. The moment he stepped onto the porch, the car's door opened and a tall man stepped out, wearing a police windbreaker, the same build, the same stance. Detective Hollins, the man called out casually, flashing an ID. I heard about the Carter case. Thought I'd check in. Mark's grip tightened. And you are? Officer Nolan, Organized Crime Division. The name didn't appear on any roster Mark had checked. His pulse pounded. I don't remember approving any outside help. Nolan smirked. Guess paperwork moves slower than bullets. Before Mark could respond, Rex, who had been resting inside the car, started barking furiously, tugging at his leash toward the man. Riley jumped from his chair and ran toward the door, shouting for the first time in days, "No!" The sound of his voice shattered the silence. And in the same instant, Nolan reached inside his jacket. Gun needle flashed. Mark dove, a gunshot tore through the air, glass exploded, and the peaceful street turned into chaos. Rex lunged, tackling Nolan to the ground as Mark shouted, "Drop it! Drop IT!" But even as the man went down, a cold smile crept across his face. You think this ends with me? He hissed. You have no idea what she found. Mark's blood ran cold. What who found? Nolan's eyes darted toward the boy, and then, with chilling calm, he whispered, Ask your department. The precinct was in lockdown. Mark had never seen the building this tense. Whispers in hallways, officers avoiding eye contact, Command staff making hushed phone calls behind closed doors. Nolan's arrest had shaken everyone. An organized crime officer who didn't exist on any record, carrying police-issued weapons and trying to kill an 8-year-old boy. It didn't make sense, not unless someone inside had helped him. Riley sat in the corner of the observation room again, clutching Rex's collar. The dog stayed beside him, calm but alert, eyes never leaving the door. The boy's lips moved silently, repeating something over and over. Janet leaned in. "He keeps mouthing the same words," she whispered to Mark. "I think he's saying tunnel." Mark frowned. Tunnel? He pulled up the digital floor plans of the Carter home. The house had been small, built decades ago, but beneath the foundation were old maintenance tunnels from when the neighborhood had a textile factory nearby. They'd been sealed for years. What if his mom found something down there? Mark murmured. "Something worth killing for," Janet added quietly. Mark turned to Riley. "Buddy, can you show us?" The boy hesitated, then nodded, just once. Within the hour, they were back at the ruins of the burned house. The smell of char still hung in the air. Riley held Rex's leash tightly, guiding them toward the back wall, the same area where the metal box had been found. He stopped near a half-collapsed section of flooring, crouched and tapped the ground twice. Rex growled, pawing at the spot. Mark knelt beside him and brushed away the ash. Beneath it was a rusted handle, half-melted but visible. He yanked, and a square hatch opened with a deep creak. A dark stairway led below. The air that drifted up smelled like damp earth and metal. They descended slowly, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The tunnel stretched far beneath the neighborhood, lined with old pipes and abandoned crates. But as they walked deeper, the crates changed, newer wood, recent labels. Janet shone her light over one. "These markings. These are military issue. Restricted shipments." Mark opened one of the crates and froze. Inside were rifles, sealed narcotics packets, and fake evidence bags labeled with police insignia. It wasn't just corruption. It was organized trafficking under the badge. He turned to Janet, voice low. They were using abandoned tunnels to move contraband under police radar. Riley's mom must have discovered it. "She recorded that video," Janet whispered. "And they'd burned her house to erase it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny charred USB cap, the missing piece of the flash drive they'd recovered earlier. He placed it in Mark's hand, then pointed upward, as if saying, "They're still up there." Mark's gut twisted. Someone inside the department had ordered this. Nolan wasn't working alone. When they climbed back up, Mark saw it, 2 unmarked cruisers parked at the edge of the property. The men inside weren't from his unit, Janet whispered. "Mark, do you recognize them?" He didn't answer. His jaw tightened. "They're internal affairs," he said at last. "But not from our jurisdiction." Before he could move, one of the men stepped out, wearing the same insignia as Nolan. "Detective Hollins," he said coldly. "We'll take it from here." Riley stepped behind Mark, clutching Rex. Mark stared at the man's eyes, calm, unflinching, trained. He realized then Internal Affairs wasn't here to protect a case. They were here to erase it. Wind howled through the burned-out neighborhood as darkness swallowed the streets. The unmarked cruisers idled at the edge of the property, headlights off, their silhouettes blending into the stormy night. Detective Mark Holland's instincts screamed danger. He'd seen that kind of silence before, right before a raid meant to erase witnesses. "Janet," he said under his breath, "get Riley in the car now," but it was too late. The so-called Internal Affairs officers stepped closer, their boots crunching over debris. The one in front, tall, clean-shaven, eyes like cold glass, flashed a badge. "Detective Hollins," he said evenly, "you're interfering in an ongoing federal case." "The boy comes with us." Mark's hand hovered near his sidearm. "Federal case?" He narrowed his eyes. "Then where's your paperwork?" The man's smirk was all the answer he needed. Behind Mark, Rex started to growl, low and dangerous. Riley clung to the dog's fur, trembling. He whispered something, a sound barely audible. "Rex. Circle." The dog shifted position, moving between Riley and the men, growling louder. The officers' hands inched toward their weapons. Janet whispered, "Mark, we can't fight them out here." We'll never win. He looked toward the open hatch, the tunnel they'd just come from. Then we don't fight. We disappear. With one swift motion, Mark scooped Riley into his arms. Go! Gunfire exploded behind them. Bullets tore through the air, splintering burnt wood. Janet ducked and slammed. The hatch shut as they dropped, back into the darkness below. Rex barked wildly, the echo bouncing off the tunnel walls. Mark landed hard, twisting his shoulder but holding tight to the boy. Run, the narrow passage smelled. Of smoke and damp iron, the flashlight flickered as Janet stumbled behind them. The rumble of boots above echoed. They were being followed. Look, Riley stood behind them, tears running silently down his cheeks. Down here. Mark pointed left, where the tunnel split. He recognized the old city blueprints from memory. This one leads to the river. They sprinted through knee-deep water, hearts pounding. Riley didn't cry, didn't scream, just held the burned photo of his mother tight against his chest. Mark's chest burned with guilt. She died trying to protect this kid, and now I'm all he has. The tunnel shook with distant footsteps, closer now. Then the radio on Mark's belt crackled. Detective Hollins, came the cold voice of the lead officer. You're making a mistake. We don't want the boy dead. We just want the files. Mark ripped the radio off and hurled it into the darkness. They're tracking us, Janet hissed. They reached an old rusted gate blocking the way out. Mark grabbed the bars, pulling with everything he had. It wouldn't budge. Step back, Janet said, raising her gun. She fired twice. The lock shattered. The gate fell with a crash. They'd burst out into the open night, gasping as rain lashed their faces. The tunnel had led them near the riverbank, far from the streetlights. Mark crouched beside Riley, brushing mud from his cheek. You okay, buddy? The boy nodded, eyes wide, then pointed back toward the tunnel. From the darkness, Rex barked once, sharply. Then silence. Rex? Mark called out. No answer. Janet gripped his arm. They've got him, Mark. We have to move. But before they could run, a voice echoed faintly from the tunnel, low, mocking, amplified by the walls. You can't hide forever, detective. Mark turned toward the sound, his jaw tight, eyes fierce. Oh, I don't plan to, he muttered. Then he lifted Riley into the car, started the engine, and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the echo of a war that was only just beginning, because now he knew this wasn't just corruption, it was a network. And an 8-year-old boy was the key to exposing it all. Dawn crept over the city like a bruise. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened with the memory of chaos. Mark drove for hours, staying off main roads, avoiding cameras, ditching his phone at a rest stop. Every reflection in the mirror felt like a threat. Riley sat quietly in the back seat, wrapped in a warm blanket. Exhaustion pulled at his small face, but his eyes, those dark, knowing eyes, never closed. He was alert, like someone who'd learned the world wasn't safe. Not even in daylight. They reached an old cabin near the edge of Lake Weston, a safe house. Mark used years ago for undercover ops. He parked the car deep in the trees and shut off the engine. The silence felt strange after the night's violence. Inside, Janet spread a dusty map on the table. We can't stay here long, she said. If those men tracked us once, they'll do it again. We need to know what they're after. Mark nodded, pulling out the broken flash drive and the missing USB cap Riley had given him. She died to hide this, he said quietly. Let's see what's on it. He connected it to his old laptop. The screen flickered, then a single folder appeared. For Riley. Riley stepped closer, clutching the edge of the table. His fingers trembled. Mark double-clicked the file. A video opened, grainy, shaky, recorded late at night. It was his mother. Her face was pale under a single bulb, eyes red from crying. If you're watching this, baby, she began, voice breaking. Then they found me. Mark and Janet exchanged glances. I worked in evidence storage at the precinct, she continued. I thought I was helping people, but then I saw what they were moving through the tunnels, guns, drugs, files, marked destroy after transfer, all under the name of a company called Silverline Freight. She wiped her tears. I made copies, Riley. I sent one to a detective I trust. If something happens to me, you find him. His name is... The screen froze. Static. Mark slammed his palm against the table. No, no, come on. The file resumed, distorted now, voice muffled. Can't trust anyone inside? They're watching me. If you ever feel scared, show Rex the signal. He'll take you to safety. Promise me, baby. Promise me? Then the video cut out completely. Silence filled the cabin. Riley stood still, tears streaming down his face, but his expression was steady. He looked up at Mark. You, he whispered. Mark blinked. What? Riley's voice was quiet but certain. She said, You. Janet covered her mouth, stunned. Mark's chest tightened. He remembered meeting Riley's mother once, years ago, briefly when she worked in archives. She'd thanked him for helping get her neighbor's son out of a wrongful arrest. He hadn't thought much of it then, but now it hit him like thunder. She had trusted him, even in death. He turned to Riley. We'll finish what she started, he said. I promise? Suddenly Rex barked from outside, sharp, urgent. Mark grabbed his gun and rushed to the window. Two black SUVs rolled up the dirt path, their lights off. Janet whispered, How did they find us this fast? Mark's mind raced. Only a handful of people knew about this cabin. One of them had to be leaking information. He looked at Riley, who was clutching Rex's collar, his small frame trembling again, but this time, with fear and defiance both. Mark, Janet said, loading her weapon. What now? He glanced toward the woods, jaw set. We don't wait for them to knock. The headlights flared brighter. Engines revved. Time to run, Mark said. But not aimlessly. He slipped the USB drive into his pocket. She said she sent a copy to a detective she trusted. Janet's eyes widened. Then we find him. Mark nodded once. Before they find us. The forest roared with wind and fear. Tires screeched behind them as Mark's car sped down the gravel road. Headlights off, heartbeats louder than the engine. The safe house was gone. Flames rose in the distance where it had once stood. They'd escaped by seconds. Riley sat between Mark and Janet, clutching Rex's collar tightly. His eyes glimmered with tears, but he didn't cry. He was too focused on what lay ahead, on finding the man his mother trusted. Mark gripped the steering wheel, every nerve burning. She said she sent a copy to a detective she trusted, he muttered. We need to think, who could that be? Janet flipped open her laptop, scrolling through old personnel lists. You've been in this department for 15 years. Mark, who from that time would she trust? Someone clean? Someone still in service. He hesitated. Maybe Detective Aaron Pierce. Janet looked up. Pierce? The one who transferred to internal affairs? Yeah, Mark said. He was the only one who never took bribes, never looked the other way. He handled narcotics corruption cases before they pushed him out. If anyone would protect her evidence, it's him. But if he's in internal affairs, Janet warned, he might already be compromised. Mark shook his head. We don't have another lead. They drove to an old warehouse near the city docks, Pierce's rumored off-the-books office. When they arrived, the place was half abandoned, creaking in the wind. Rex sniffed the air and growled low. Mark motioned for silence, gun drawn. Stay behind me. They pushed the door open. Inside, flickering lights revealed stacks of case files, maps, and newspaper clippings pinned to a board. At the center was a single photo, Riley's mother, smiling, circled in red ink. A voice echoed from the shadows. I was wondering when you'd come. Mark spun around, weapon raised, and there he was. Detective Aaron Pierce, older, now grayer, with tired eyes that had seen too much. He raised both hands slowly. You don't need that, Mark. I'm on your side. Mark lowered the gun slightly, but his voice was sharp. You have 5 seconds to prove it. Pierce sighed, stepping closer. I knew his mother. She came to me the night before the fire. She said she'd found something in the evidence room, files connecting. Silverline freight to the department's funding accounts. Millions in laundered cash. I tried to help, but he hesitated. The next morning, her house was gone. Riley's small voice broke the silence. You didn't save her. Pierce's shoulders slumped. No, he whispered. I didn't, and I'll live with that. Mark took out the flash drive. This is what she left behind. We saw part of it, but the file was corrupted. Pierce nodded and opened his old terminal. Let me try something. Minutes passed. The drive blinked, the laptop hissed, then a new folder appeared. Labeled simply, Names. Mark leaned in. The document opened, revealing a list of officers, politicians, and company executives, all connected to Silverline Freight. But what froze him cold was the first name on the list. Deputy Chief Walter Briggs? Mark whispered, "That's our boss." Janet's face went pale. "He runs every major case in this city." Pierce shut the laptop. "Now you understand why Nolan came after the boy. Briggs controls the tunnel routes, the evidence flow, the money. Riley's mother found the financial trail. And Briggs will burn the world to bury it." Mark clenched his fists. "Then we take him down." Before Pierce could answer, Rex barked sharply, ears up, tail rigid. Mark turned. "What is it, boy?" Then he saw it, a red laser dot sliding across the wall. Sniper scope. "Down!" Mark shouted. The window shattered. A single shot tore through the room. Papers flew like snow. Pierce fell backward, clutching his shoulder. "They found us." Mark dragged Riley behind a desk as Janet fired back through the broken glass. "We're surrounded." Pierce groaned, blood soaking his sleeve. "Take the drive. Go. Don't let Briggs get it." Riley's hands shook as he pulled the drive from the computer. Holding it to his chest, Mark looked at the boy, then at the burning chaos outside. "You ready to finish what your mom started?" Riley met his eyes. No fear this time, only fire. He nodded. "Let's end it." The city never slept, but tonight its heartbeat was faster, restless, uneasy, like it knew something was about to break. Detective Mark Hollins drove through the back streets toward police headquarters, headlights off, knuckles white on the wheel. Beside him sat Riley, exhausted, pale, yet fiercely awake. He clutched the flash drive tightly in his small fist. In the back seat, Rex sat alert, watching the road with unblinking eyes. Janet followed in a second car, scanning every mirror, every alley. They had one goal: get the evidence inside the department servers before Deputy Chief Briggs could erase it. Mark's voice was low, steady. "Once we upload this to the internal network, it auto-shares to the federal database. They won't be able to cover it up." Janet replied over the radio, "Assuming we make it inside alive." He gave a grim half-smile. "We will." The plan was madness. Walking right into the building, controlled by the man who'd been hunting them. But Mark knew it was the only way. The department's own firewalls would block any external upload. To expose Briggs, they needed to use his system. As they approached the headquarters, Riley whispered, "He works there?" Mark nodded. "He runs it." The boy's hand trembled, but he lifted his chin. "Then that's where it ends." They parked 2 blocks away. Rain began to fall again, thin and cold. The glow of the police tower loomed ahead, a steel and glass fortress. Inside, the night shift was quiet. Only a few officers lingered, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Mark flashed his badge at the guard, who barely glanced up. "Evidence update," Mark said calmly. "Briggs wants it logged before dawn?" The guard waved him through. They entered the records floor, rows of flickering lights, walls lined with decades of secrets. Janet joined them, checking corners as they moved. Riley stayed close to Rex, his small hand resting on the dog's neck. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence between them was unbreakable trust. Mark found the main terminal. "This is it," he whispered. He plugged in the drive. "Once I hit enter, there's no turning back." "Then do it," Janet said, comma. He hesitated only a second, then pressed the key. The screen blinked. Uploading files. 1%, 15%, 43%. Suddenly, the lights went out. A voice echoed through the darkness, calm and cold. "I have to admit, Detective," Deputy Chief Briggs said, stepping into the light of the hallway, "I didn't expect you to be this predictable." Mark spun, gun raised. Briggs stood flanked by 2 armed officers, his silver badge gleaming like poison. "Put the gun down," Briggs said smoothly. "You're trespassing on department property, stealing classified data, endangering a child. I can bury you in one report." Mark's jaw tightened. "You already buried 1 woman." Briggs smirked. The evidence clerk. She should have stayed quiet." Riley's eyes burned with tears, but no sound left his lips. He just stared at the man who'd taken everything from him. Briggs tilted his head. You think that drive will save you? My people control every system in this building. By the time the upload's halfway done, it'll be gone. Mark's hand hovered over the laptop. Maybe, he said softly, but I didn't start the upload from this drive. Briggs frowned. What? Mark smiled faintly. Riley did? Riley reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wireless adapter, a second drive, smaller, blinking green. It's already sending, Mark said. Direct link. You can't stop it. Briggs' expression twisted from arrogance to fury. You think you can destroy me, Hollins? He raised his gun, but before he could fire, Rex lunged. The dog hit him hard, knocking him against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. Janet grabbed it and kicked it away. Briggs struggled, shouting, You don't know who you're dealing with. I am this department. Mark stepped forward, voice cold and steady. Not anymore. On the computer screen, the upload hit 100%. Outside, every monitor in the precinct flickered, showing hidden videos, names and transaction records. Officers all over the building stared in shock as their deputy, Chief's Crimes, lit up the screens. Briggs froze, pale, realizing it was over. You'll regret this, he hissed. Riley looked at him one last time, then gave a quiet signal to Rex. The dog stepped back, calm and poised, eyes still locked on Briggs. The sound of sirens filled the distance, federal agents rushing in. Mark placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Your mom did it, Riley. You finished what she started. For the first time, Riley smiled, small, trembling, but real. Briggs was dragged away in handcuffs as rain thundered against the windows. But even as they watched him disappear, Mark's gut told him this wasn't the end. Corruption that deep never dies easy. It just hides. And somewhere in the ashes of the old tunnels, something else was waiting to be found. Would you like me to continue with Part 9, where after Briggs' arrest, another shocking truth is revealed? Someone close to Mark was secretly part of the operation. The next morning, sunlight crawled through the gray sky, touching the cracked windows of the police headquarters. For the first time in weeks, the building wasn't ruled by fear, but by whispers. Officers crowded around their desks, murmuring about the footage that had gone public overnight. Deputy Chief Briggs, the untouchable man who had commanded their respect for a decade, was behind bars. But victory didn't feel like victory. Detective Mark Hollins sat in the interrogation room, staring at the wall. The federal agents had taken over the case, sealing off every piece of evidence, every file, every name. Riley sat beside him, quiet as always, playing with Rex's tag around his neck. Janet entered, holding 2 coffees. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. It's over, Mark, she said softly, setting a cup in front of him. Mark shook his head. No, it's not, she frowned. What do you mean? He leaned forward, his voice low. Last night, before we left the warehouse, Pierce said something. He told me Briggs controlled the tunnels and the funding channels. But there's one thing that doesn't fit. Janet sat down slowly. Go on. Someone leaked our location. Twice, Mark said. Once at the safe house, once at the warehouse. Only 3 people knew where we were, you, me, and Pierce. Her hand froze around her cup. You think Pierce... No, Mark's gaze lifted to hers. Pierce nearly died helping us. It wasn't him. The room went still. Only Riley's faint breathing filled the air. Then the boy whispered, phone. Mark turned to him. What did you say? Riley pointed at Janet's pocket. Phone. Janet blinked. What about it? Riley's small voice trembled. Heard red light? Mark's pulse quickened. Red light? Riley nodded. When we ran from house? Your phone blinked. Mark's blood ran cold. He slowly reached across the table. Janet, give me your phone. Her eyes flickered just once before she forced a tight smile. Mark, don't do this. He stood. Give it to me. Janet's jaw tightened. You don't understand? I had to... Rex growled, sensing the shift. Mark stepped back, realization dawning in his eyes. You were working for Briggs? Tears welled in her eyes. Not for him. I didn't have a choice. My brother, he's in prison? Briggs threatened to have him killed if I didn't keep tabs on you. I thought if I just fed them your location, maybe he'd let us go. Mark's voice broke into disbelief. You could have told me. She shook her head. And get my brother's body mailed to me? No, Mark, I thought I could control it. I thought I could protect you and him.